You're angry. You're like so mad, you're frustrated, and you're just like, oh, I'm coming out of my skin, and you just can't seem to get a hold of your emotions. Well, that is emotional dysregulation. And so we are going to talk about emotional regulation today because it is a huge, huge part of inner peace. So welcome to the Positivity Experience. Let's get a handle on those emotions. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It's your girl, Lori, and I am so happy to be here with you today with this beautiful topic and I really had to take some notes on my topic because this is a big part of what I do is working on emotional regulation. And I was like, as I was starting to form it in my head and I was kind of timing it, I was like, okay, that's like 2 hours. There's no way in the world I'm going to do a 2-hour podcast. I would lose you guys in the first 10 minutes. You'd be like, oh my God, this is too long. So I made some bullet point notes just for the most important things to tell you, but there's so much more to it. And welcome to the newest Patreon subscribers. Over on Patreon today, it's going to, the Patreon always complements what we're talking about here. And what we're talking about over there is your distorted thinking. And the distorted thinking actually does lead into the emotional regulation and dysregulation, but this is what we're talking about here. And over there, we are talking about cognitive distortion. So if that is something that you struggle with, you can consider joining it. It's patreon.com/the positivity. Actually, yeah, it is the positivity experience. And, or you can just go anywhere that you get this podcast and you can click on it right there. So I want to talk to you about emotions because, oh boy, it is so big. And there is something, a little tidbit in your emotional distortion where you think that your emotions are real and they are not, right? Thoughts and feelings are not facts. Listen, I know they seem so real in the moment and your thoughts seem so real in the moment, but they're both waves, right? You ride them like a wave. This doesn't mean that you invalidate your emotions. This means you feel them, you label them, and you actually process them. But when you're not doing that, that's where we feel like we are just coming out of our skin. And I'm bringing up a lot of these topics because these are things I'm writing about that I experienced, in the book that I'm writing. And so as they come up, I'm always like, oh my God, this seems important to tell you guys because there's no way I'm the only one that had dealt with it. And my emotions, I always responded strictly out of anger. But anger itself is not a real emotion. Anger is it's like if you're saying I'm short or I'm tall, right? So anger itself is based in fear, frustration, or hurt. Yes, you can have all three of those at the same time. But anything you're mad about is going to fall into at least one of those buckets. And so what happens is you're responding out of emotion. Actually, you're reacting out of emotion. You're definitely not responding out of emotion. Because when you respond, you're able to take a break. Take a break, take a breath, and okay, let me actually sit with this for a second before I give that instant answer. And I'm going to give you some tools here that you'll be able to use. So make sure that you're jotting it down, or you can always come back and reference it. But I promise you, the more you use it now, the better it is going to be. So this is not a one-off. You're not just going to listen to this podcast, try 2 or 3 of these topics or anybody else's podcast for that matter. And then all of a sudden you're like, my emotions are great, because it's going to take a lot of work because it has to be consistent and it has to be something that you are really ready to commit to yourself. You have to show up for yourself. And that means that you're basically reprogramming how you react to something, right? So I want you to get clear in that because your emotional regulation is where, let's say you're super anxious or you just feel like, oh my God, I just don't know what to say. And it's it's all inside of your body and you feel like you're super stressed. How I would explain mine is I kind of think I just woke up in emotional dysregulation. I was ready to take on the day. And when I don't mean a good way, I'm ready to take on the day. No, I was ready to take on the day. I was going to battle the moment I woke up and my eyeballs were visual. I was like, okay, well, I'm ready. So I was already in an emotional, heightened, activated state. So I was already dysregulated, from the time I woke up. Okay. I will tell you, and we will get into it later, mindfulness saved my life. I am a mindful expert, and I promise you it has saved my life because it's keeping you present. And it's allowing you to actually feel and process your feelings. Now, there are things that come up that can make it harder for you to regulate your emotions, anxieties, depressions, other mental illnesses, other things that you've dealt with, and unprocessed trauma, so we know where it comes from. But remember, those reasonings they are a reason, they are not an excuse. So you can't say, well, I have this and this is why I can't regulate my emotions. It's just more difficult. So you're going to have to use more tools, right? So number one, know that you can do this because you deserve to do this for yourself. Because I don't know about you, but when I am spiraling, I am completely out of control. I feel like I'm going crazy, literally, like I'm totally not disconnected, like disassociation. Like I just feel like I'm going crazy, like I'm going to lose my mind. I can feel it in my body. My breath goes, I start freaking out, Now I don't do this anymore, but this is how it presented for me. Okay. And I was always activated. My shoulder earrings, like my shoulders were always up in my ears. I was always angry, or if somebody displayed emotion, I'd be like, oh my God, what is this? And then I would get more annoyed about their emotions. And, that just kind of comes across the board. So what are some things that you can do? Because the big key here is you got to remember to put a pause. Number one, you got to put a pause before you go into emotionally reacting. Because when you're emotionally reacting, there's no sensical, there's nothing sensical coming out of your mind. You're doing so strictly out of frustration and irritation. And you can typically say things that sometimes you don't mean. And if you do mean them, you might not have meant them the way that you said them, right? And it's very difficult for somebody to listen to you and to understand what it is that you're trying to say when you are spiraling. If you are acting out of emotion, if you're screaming and yelling and you're frustrated, other people are not going to listen to you. They are going to shut down. So even if you have something valid in that moment to say, if you are going out of emotion, people will shut down because you're going to seem very, people will call you like a loose cannon. You're just a loose cannon. I can't tell you anything. We can't even talk. Like you overreact to everything. You might tell yourself that you overreact. I am an overreactor. And I most certainly was. And when you are spiraling, you are overreacting often. Doesn't mean that what you're responding to, if you were to respond to it, that would be great. But you gotta, number one, do not go into instant reaction. See, you go to battle because you automatically think somebody's trying to get over on me. Oh, they're not going to get over on me. Oh, hard pass. Yeah. FYI, again, if you want to have the last word and you and I are having a conversation and you're in emotional dysregulation, I'm going to let you win. You can have the last word. I'm going to walk away and you're going to be sitting there talking to yourself because I'm not going to engage in it. So this is good for you on the other side of it, not just if you have dysregulation, but if somebody else is like sort of spinning out, you do not have to stay there. You do not. I don't care who it is, you do not. And you have to be okay with letting them, quote unquote, win that day, because at the end of the day, later on, after you process, you're able to come back and articulate it in a fashion that doesn't seem attacking, even though perhaps that person verbally started to attack you, or you felt as though you were verbally attacked. If you go back at it toe to toe, no one's listening to anybody. Everybody wants the last word. And that happens when you're going out of full on emotional response. So, number one is in that emotional regulation is you don't react at like that moment. You have to give yourself a second. Pause. Go to the bathroom if you can. Walk away if you can. Listen, I know sometimes you can't do those things, so you're going to have to take a breath. And you can say, you know what? I'm not in a space to respond to this right now. You can literally say that. I'm not in a space to respond to this right now. Right? Like you're allowed to say that. That's called emotional maturity. And if they want to be like, well, of course you can't. Of course you can't respond right now. That's right. Because you know I'm right. Again, anything that you say to them when they're in a heightened state, in an activated state, they do not care. They are not listening to you. So it's irrelevant whether you want to say, yeah, okay, you're right, or you're wrong, or what. It's not going to give you your best and highest good. And, this is why when you are responding, sometimes you're responding based in a past experience right? You're sitting there and you are responding from a past experience because you were hurt and this seems very familiar to you. And so this is bringing up past stuff into you and it's triggering you. And now you are going straight out of reaction mode. And again, that is why that break is imperative, right? It's the same reason why you never respond yes to things right away. You don't do it if you're happy. You don't do it if you're sad, if you're inebriated, if you're tired. You don't respond with a yes. It should always be, let me check and get back to you, right? If I say yes, I'm going to do something, barring something big happening, I'm going to do it. But I'm rarely going to just commit to something. I'm going to say, oh, let me check my schedule. Hey, I'm not sure what my plans are right now. If I tell you I'm going to do it, barring, like I said, anything weird, I'm going to show up and I'm going to do it. But I will not do it out of obligation. And so it's kind of the same thing with your emotional responses. You want to try as best as you can. Do not go strictly out of emotion because there's a lot of hurt there. There's a lot of pain there. And when you are acting out of emotional response, you have to remember that that's a good indicator. Give that part of you love and light. Give that part of you grace. Do not sit there and beat yourself up because of this. Give yourself grace. Because this part of you, at some point or another, this action served you. It really did, right? Maybe it was something that you did when you felt threatened, right? And you didn't have any other responses to it. It helped you at some point, but it comes a point in time where it doesn't. Not everything is meant to be the coping strategy for the rest of your life. I mean, breathing, things like that. But I mean, when it comes to anger and aggravation. Now, the other side of the emotional response that you really have to focus on is not suppressing your emotions, okay? Like you can't sit there and suppress emotions. When you are suppressing your emotions, there's a few things. You can feel numb. I call it flat. Like, you're just kind of like, oh, I'm not really sure how I feel. Like you really can't describe it. You're just like, I don't know, I feel flat. I just feel numb. I don't know how to feel. Again, could be a trauma response. We know the reasonings, but I want to be a good indicator as to how this regulation can be problematic. Because if you're not acknowledging your feelings, you acknowledge, not everybody else, you're acknowledging your feelings. If you're not doing that, you're going to be forgetful. You're going to, you're also going to feel odd about other people's emotions. So if you are not actually living in your emotion, meaning like understanding it, seeing how it works for you, you're not going to understand somebody else's emotion. If they're crying, you're going to be like, oh God, like what? Oh, I got to get out of here, right? Because you aren't familiar with that because you don't know how to do it for yourself. Or it might have been looked down upon when you were little. But again, you're here now, right? So when you are suppressing your emotions, you've got all that going on. You can also have that time. And this is where you see this a lot. You're on a beach. You're like living your best life. You're like, oh my God, I'm finally on vacation. And you're sitting there. You've ordered your drink. You're getting ready to have like your first pina colada of the day and you're chilling. And then all of a sudden, all the stress hits you. This anxiety hits you. And you're like, what is going on? How am I even remotely stressed on an island? How is this possible? Well, because you haven't processed your emotions. See, when you don't process something, it has to go somewhere. If you keep blowing up a balloon and blowing up a balloon and blowing up a balloon and you don't stop blowing it up, it's going to pop. And that's exactly what happens with your emotions. And this doesn't mean that you spew them all over everyone. This is why you have to process them, right? Because you get yourself caught up because you're like, I don't know what I'm feeling. That's okay. Allow to feel it in your body first. So this is where you're going to have to start feeling your feelings. What does it feel like? Well, I feel like I'm going to cry. Okay, cool. Let's kind of talk about it. Yeah, I feel heavy. I feel like empty. I feel so sad. I feel like there's a weight on my back. Okay, so that seems overwhelming to me. So that means you are probably dealing with overwhelm, maybe a little depression, maybe some things that you still haven't processed from your past. So you have to acknowledge what it is, but you have to feel it in order to heal it. That is life 101. Feel to heal. Because if you keep suppressing it, it can literally create physical problems. Stress creates physical problems, right? And, we live in a world where you're going to have stress, but you have to sit with what that emotion feels like and not seek for that emotional approval from somebody else, right? So just because you're spinning out doesn't mean that the world halts and everyone comes to your rescue because you're spiraling out of control. Because your emotions are only in existence in your consciousness. If you were abducted by aliens or hit by a bus today, your emotions don't just fall all over the place. They're not like, oh, clean up crew. We got all these emotions everywhere. What are we going to do with them? No one's doing that. So remember, your emotions only exist within your consciousness. Without your consciousness, you don't have emotions regardless. That you seek to, I guess you could be unconscious. But if you were passed away or crossed over, your emotions aren't just lingering on. And I think that that's an important factor for you, because the more that you try to avoid them, or the more that you are expecting other people to solve them for you. This is the other problem. When you're spinning, you're almost like somebody has to fix it. Oh my God, somebody has to fix it. No, they do not. No, they do not, because they can't. Right? Because what calms you, there's scientific things that we know. Breathing exercises, meditation, grounding, the 5 journals that I tell you about all the time. So we know that there's things that are effective, but you have to do them. Bobby down the street isn't going to run to your defense and make your emotions better, because the more you're looking externally for that emotional resolve, the more that you are going to be codependent on that emotional resolve. You're going to constantly seek somebody for that emotional resolve, right? Because you have all these emotions and thoughts and feelings, and they're big feelings, like these big feelings. And then, everything is so large and heavy, and, it's a lot. And that's why you have to be the one to process them, because you and I could experience stress about the exact same thing, but experience them vastly different. And just because I'm experiencing them one way and you're experiencing them another way doesn't make it worse or better. There's no competition. Don't make a competition out of it. But that's why I'm saying it's so important for you to sit in a space of self-awareness. See, your self-awareness, self-love, anything self is always going to be the foundation of success in your life. Always, 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 always. You have to have your self-love, your self-realization, and you have to be able to label them. So if you feel sad, you say, I feel sad. Okay, well, what does sad feel like in your body? Again, say sad feels really oppressive. I feel like I'm going to just burst at the seams and cry at any given time. I feel like there's a big, dark, heavy cloud that's just lingering over me, and it just feels so heavy. Okay, that is your description of sad. Mine might be something different. So remember too, and this is an important one, because how you feel when you're sad may be different than how somebody else feels when they're sad. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of common denominators, but everyone experiences things differently. And that's why somebody can't fix it for you, right? Because there's nothing really to fix. You're not broken. You just have a lot of scattered emotions that seem really big and strong. Right? So what do you do with all of these things? What do you do with these frustrations? Well, number one, like I said, the 5 journals, it has been a game changer in my life. If you want to know more about that, you can pop right over to my YouTube under playlists, look at the 5 journal series. It is imperative, because what it does is it allows you, you're not doing it in one journal. It allows you to kind of compartmentalize each thing. And it really helps because it allows you to touch base with those feelings. So if they're positive feelings and positive actions, we are going to put those in the positivity journal, and it gives you space to have gratitude. It gives you space to love what you've done and see the progress, right? It gives you that place versus trying to find it through a journal where you have good stuff, bad stuff, mediocre stuff, like all these things are in there, and it's just another catch-all. So the 5 journals are just absolutely amazing. Number 2 with that is experiencing life from a different vision. You have to reframe how you see life. If you have a dirty lens on from your glasses, okay, your glasses are dirty, everything you see out of those glasses are going to be dirty. Everything. I don't care. If you're looking at a mountain, you'll be like, wow, that mountain's beautiful. It's a little dirty though because of my glasses, because that's how you're seeing things. So when you see life all negative, it's going to remain all negative. We talk a lot about that over in on distorted thinking, because when you're sitting in that, if you don't reframe it from the woe is me to the wow. Okay, why not me? What can I learn from this? It's all a mindset shift that you have to practice. At no point are you going to switch up this mindset and in 5 seconds you're going to be like, oh my God, I feel great. You're not. You're going to have to be effective in this reframe, right? We know that the breathing exercises are the key. I love box breathing. I do mine a little different than how they do in the military and other places. And how I like to do box breathing is I like to breathe in one color. I like to hold it. Breathe in one color for 4, whatever that is for the day. It changes. No color is good. No color is bad. So if you want to breathe in black, breathe in black. It's not like all black color is bad. Like energy is just energy. So you breathe it in for 4. Then when I hold it for 4, I change colors again. Then when I exhale for 4, I change colors again. And then I go into like a translucent neutral. And I do that a few times, right? It's a great, great breathing exercise. And if you're on the abundance tier in the Patreon in this April month, you're going to get another meditation. It's going to have a lot to do with breathing. That's what made me think about it. But so your breath is something that you carry with you everywhere you go. Breath equals life, right? So breath equals life. So you're carrying that with you everywhere that you go. So you're working on what your breathing is, and your breathing has this methodical way of bringing you back to base. A good thing that you can add with your breathing is what they call ujjayi breathing. And that if you do yoga and things like that, meditation, you already know what it is, but it's that Darth Vader breath. So you'd go, see that like Darth Vader breath? That's ujjayi breathing. And it's really good because it really helps bring you back to base within your body. And you're not just going to breathe 2 or 3 times and think that it's better. And you don't do it when you're in emotional distress. I mean, you do it when you're in emotional distress. That's not the only time you do it. See, your body doesn't know that it's supposed to relax if you only do this when you're in peril. Your body's not going to relax and then you're going to be like, this breathing doesn't work. Of course it works. You just haven't given it an indication, your body the indication that when we do this, this means that we go into relax mode. This is why you use breath in yoga. You use breath in meditation. You use breath in just about everything that is going to be relaxing for your body. So when you feel yourself spiraling, it's not about avoiding it. You never avoid your emotions, but you don't respond out of emotional response in that second, right? So you want to pump your brakes, give yourself a break. Wait till you feel safe to process it. Like, okay, God, I can't process this here. It's toxic for me. That's okay. Just hold space for it. Process it as soon as you feel safe, right? Because it's going to be very helpful. And then to get you back into base, you're going to do your deep breathing, right? And again, add that ujjayi, that breath, okay? That like raspy type breath. It's going to be really, really helpful. How long does it take if you are allowing your emotions to really regulate and you're labeling them and you're saying what they are and you're aware that they're just a temporary thing? 90 seconds. About 1.5 minutes. It's the same thing really with an anxiety attack, even a little less at times. If you are always fighting it, like if you're fighting your emotions, if you're living in your emotions, if you're avoiding them, that 90 seconds is going to increase. It can be days, it could be months, it could be anything, but it's really only 90 seconds, right? If you allow it to come. And you have to get really good, and the more consistent you are, the better it is, of allowing them to come. Allow those emotions to come, those big feelings to come, and label them, but don't judge them. I didn't say label and judge them. Label them, oh, these are sad. Not, why do I have these stupid emotions, right? Because so much of what you do in that negative self-talk is, I'm so dumb. Like, why can't I just not be angry all the time? I'm so stupid. Why am I so stupid, right? So when you say those things, you're literally saying, you're invalidating your emotions. You're literally saying, oh, well, how I feel is not valid. That's exactly what you're saying. Right? So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself that time to process it as soon as you feel safe, right? Because if you don't know how you feel, you're not going to be able to release it because you're just going to find a little corner and put it in, right? And there's some amazing things that you can do to really help with that. And things like goal setting, right? Set goals, but make sure that they're micro goals. Right? Episode 37 of this podcast will talk to you a little bit about micro goals. So you want to be okay in that space of micro goaling. Everything doesn't need to be done right now. Everything isn't a stage 5 emergency. Everything is not equally important, right? Everything that you have to do in life is not of equal importance, right? So you have to know what your goals are and not get attached to the outcome of those goals. That's object focused. And we're not going to do object focused, because then you're going to attach your worth to that object. And I always like to do a self check-in, a self monitoring. And I'll even say it to like Paul or somebody like, oh my God, I feel so stressed today. I'm not complaining. I don't necessarily need you to fix it. I'm saying, wow, I feel so stressed today. And then I might go, this is how I feel, or, I'm short of breath, or, whatever. But be into a self monitor. How are you feeling? Are you touching base with yourself? Are you allowing yourself to do the check-ins, right? You know how you're looking for all these people to validate you. Well, what about you validating you? So you still got to do all of the self check-in, as well as watching the verbiage that you say to yourself. Like I said, if you're walking around saying, I'm so stupid, I'm so dumb, this is a dumb emotion, why do I feel that way? I should be further along. Oh my God, I'm a failure. I'm such a loser, and da-da-da. Okay, well, guess what? Your brain, right? Your self-talk, your mind, body, and spirit are all connected. So the moment you say that, it sends a negative spiral down the pole into your body. So you got to start watching what you say to yourself. You got to stop watching it. And that's why you need to do the self-reinforcements. And the self-reinforcements is, I am safe. Like I'm okay. Like I've survived 100% of my bad days. You really have, by the way. You're here, right? You're here. You have survived 100% of your bad days. Nobody said it was easy. Nobody said it was fun, but you did survive it. And so when you take a pause, and you got to also lower your ego, right? Emotional regulation does come into a little bit of ego, not all of it, just a tad bit here, right? Because if refusing to process it, or if you're refusing to pull yourself away from a situation so you can process in fear of someone winning or someone getting over, then that is your ego. Okay. So there is a space where every now and again, your ego will rear its ugly head, because when it does, it's either you don't want somebody to get over on you, you want to win the day, you want to have the last word in it. Moving your body is a key to so many things. Now, you don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to run to the gym. A 10 to 15 minute walk a day is great. It's not just great for your longevity of life. It's good for your digestive. It's good for your emotions. It's how we start to disperse out our adrenaline and our anxieties. It's very, very helpful. Finding a hobby outside of life, like outside of taking care of things and family and friends and work and food and bills and all that stuff, you got to find something to do that is just yours. Not something that the family does, not something that you do with your spouse or your partner, something you do for yourself. Mine personally is crochet, and I've picked up crossword puzzles. Apparently I'm turning into a 97-year-old grandmother, and I'm perfectly fine with it. But find a hobby, find something new, try new things, do new things. And don't think that, when you pick up any hobby, you're going to suck at it at first. That's perfectly fine. You're supposed to totally suck at it, right? And then stop telling the story over and over again. When you live in now I tell my story a lot, but it's not from a victim perspective. It's from more of a teaching perspective, letting you know where I came from, letting you know that I didn't just one day just wake up and go, I think I'm going to do this because my emotions are perfect. Quite the opposite. And so, but if you keep telling the story, when you're healed, you tell the story different, right? When you're healed, you tell the story from a place of empowerment. When you're not healed and you keep repeating the same story of your life and the same traumas and you keep talking about them and you keep doing so in a space of holding on to them, that is never going to give you any possible regulation. You're going to be on a loop, because what has happened has happened. You are here. It is what it is. And it's really getting deep into that. Baby, gratitude. Gratitude is the best tude to have. It is the best tude to have. Gratitude of not just things like, oh, my family, my friends, my cars, not just that. Gratitude of the trees, gratitude of the water you just drank today, gratitude of anything. Everything doesn't have to be so big. You can be grateful for things. When you're living in a space of gratitude, it's really hard to be, those two things don't go at the same time. You don't go, man, I'm so angry, I'm grateful. Oh my God, look at those trees. Why are they so pretty? You're not doing those things. So you have to remember what that looks like. Moving your body will do that. Your 5 journals are a key, a master key. It is the master key to so many other things. because it gives you a space to process. That is how you process. You don't process it by avoiding it. You don't process it by just pretending that it didn't exist. You don't process it by going, well, I should be over it now by now. What? Like, that doesn't even make sense. So that's why you have to be really, really careful. And then that's when you start making those cognitive changes, right? Because this all goes into cognitive distortion too, right? So when you're sitting in a space of a distorted thought, or you're sitting in space of a dysregulation, you're like, oh my God, there's just nowhere to get this out. That's why you see people, if they go boxing or they do karate or they go running or something, they're like, oh my God, I feel like I just moved like all this energy from me, all this negativity. And no, you're not going to go for one jog and all of a sudden it's kumbaya. This is only effective as you are consistent. You must be consistent in regulating out your emotions. And in order to do that, and if it's really problematic, make sure that you see a therapist. Make sure that you're taking medicine as directed if they give you medication. These are all tools on your toolbox. These are tools in your toolbox. There's no one magic pill. There is no one magic solution. There is an assortment of it, and none of them are effective if you are not consistent and doing them without the idea of feeling better. You cannot attach why you're doing them to an expected outcome. You do them because you're grateful in your body and your body deserves that. That is something that you need to realize, is you deserve to be able to validate yourself. Yeah, you do. You deserve to be able to say, oh, wow, I don't have to understand it. I don't have to fix anything, but I'm going to process it. This is the way I take my power. This is how I empower myself. Right? And so you can regulate yourself a lot better when you're able to know that in the long run, you protecting your peace and you showing up for you is all the validation you need. It's all the validation you need. So take a deep breath and get to work. Let's evaluate where those emotions are getting stuck and let's process them.